Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, May 14th, 2017, and this is your fun fact of the day. Last week we covered the beginning of Abram, before he became Abraham, and his wife Sarai, before she became Sarah, and some of the ordeals they went through. Today we're looking at how when Abraham was 99 years old, he became Abraham, as God told him, and Sarai became Sarah, S-A-R-A-H this time, and all the events of their life hereafter. God established this as covenant, this is a promise, with Abraham and Sarah and all the offspring that he would give them, and establishes circumcision as a physical outward sign of this covenant. Every male who was brought into the house with money, possessions, however they were bought, or if they were a foreigner who was willing to permanently stay with them, had to undergo this ordeal, no matter how old. Yes, this is the same circumcision which involves a male having the foreskin of their cut off. God also promises Abraham Sarah would bear a son. At this, Abraham laughed, which is actually why their first son, Isaac, is named Isaac, because it actually translates, he laughs. God blessed Ishmael, remember from last week, Abram's first son he had with Sarai's female servant, Hagar, but the covenant was still meant for Isaac, an actual descendant from Abraham and Sarah. After these things, Abraham did as he was told and circumcised every male of his house. Chapters 18 and 19 of Genesis, we look at the brief story of Sodom and Gomorrah, these wicked, infamous cities. There was a great outcry against them. God planned to destroy them. Knowing that his nephew was down there, Abraham pleaded for the city's life. Pleaded with God so that if he found 50 righteous people worthwhile in God's eyes, who were walking with God and would declare him Lord if asked, God wouldn't destroy those cities. Realizing the daunting task of that, Abraham eventually finally whittles it down so that he only needs to find 10. Just 10 righteous people in the entirety of these two cities. After searching these cities, long story short, 10 people were not found. God's wrath was coming. But not wanting to be completely angry and unhearing of Abraham's pleas, God sent a couple of angels to the cities to get Lot, Abraham's nephew, and his family out. Well, when the two visitors, these angels, came into Lot's house, the men of the city discovered this information, decided, hey, some new people, we want to get to know them a little better. Know them in the biblical sense. Yes, that sense. Lot actually tried to get the men of the city to not pursue these men in such that fashion, even offering up his own daughter and servants to the men for this reason, which the men wholeheartedly took advantage of, and then still wanted these visitors that Lot was shielding against them from. The angels told Lot what was to happen of the city. Lot tries to save everyone he can. To no avail, nobody believes him. So the angels just take Lot and his immediate family, and they leave Sodom and Gomorrah behind. The angels warned Lot and his family to not look back at Sodom and Gomorrah as they were being destroyed, lest they die. When Lot and his family arrived at a nearby city named Zoar, fire and brimstone rained down from heaven and destroyed these cities. However, Lot's wife, curiosity got the best of her, and she looked back at what was happening to the cities, and immediately turned into a pillar of salt. Because he became afraid, Lot ended up going up with his daughters to the hills to live on their own. Meanwhile, back with Abraham and Sarah, a year after God promised they would have a son, Sarah bore Isaac. Actually gave birth to a son. She was 90 years old when this happened. It is at this point where Sarah told Abraham to cast out Hagar and Ishmael, the previous son that Abraham had with Hagar, because she didn't like the idea of Ishmael being a co-heir with her son, Isaac. So Abraham, bending to his wife's ear, sends them away. They go out, they wander in the wilderness for a while. Eventually the water runs out. Hagar actually sets Ishmael down to die because she can't stand hearing his crying anymore and goes off on her own a little ways away, probably also to die. The Lord looked down on them with pity and with favor and brought forth water, made sure they were provided for. Remember, God also made a promise that Ishmael would also be made a great nation of. Ishmael wasn't going to be left out of this entirely. Sometime later, God called Abraham to test his faith to God. God tells Abraham, take your son, load up a donkey, go over some ways to a mountain, and offer your son up as a sacrifice to me. So Isaac and Abraham and two of their servants rode off towards a mountain that God showed them. Abraham told his two servants, wait here while my son and I go up and make an offering to God. They go up, they make an altar. Isaac notes, so Dad, we have an altar here, but I don't see the sacrifice. Abraham takes his son, binds him, and lays him on the wood. Actually draws his knife and raises his arm, the Bible describes. God was not actually looking for a child sacrifice here. He did not actually want any harm to come to Isaac, as we find out when Abraham's hand is raised to slaughter his own son, according to God's command. A shout comes down from heaven telling Abraham to stop. It's clear now, completely, absolutely clear to God that Abraham will listen to God, regardless of what the command is. No sacrifice is too great for the God that he serves. A ram is then caught in a thicket a little ways off. This is made known to Abraham. Goes, gets the ram, offers the ram to God instead. Properly so. Chapters 23 through 25 of Genesis, we see the end of Abraham and Sarah's life, and also the beginning of their sons' lives as their own independent people. Sarah was 127 years old, 37 years after giving birth to Isaac. She died. Abraham went, bought a field, had her buried in a cave in it. After this, he took his oldest servant aside and told him to make sure Isaac gets a wife. Specifically, this woman has to be from his own father's house. There has to be some sort of family relation to them. And this is for a story at another date. Abraham and Isaac lived together until Abraham died when he was 175 years old. At that point, Isaac received everything that Abraham had. Isaac buried his father Abraham in the same cave with Sarah, his wife. So this entire story of Abraham and Lot, his family, takes place through Genesis chapters 17 through 25. So covering last week how Abram started off at chapter 16, we go all the way through chapter Genesis 25. This is a long story concerning a very righteous, very godly man who we are meant to learn a lot from. Not just about him, but also much about God, his nature, his covenants with us, how he would have us interact with him. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, as is today is National Mother's Day. And in other news is National American Underground Day. This is people who live in a Hobbit type house, which is literally below grade. Not like the Underground Railroad Day, not like Coal Miners Day. Hope you've enjoyed this fun fact of the day. See you tomorrow.